It's 5:30. I'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. Good evening, and thank you all for joining us tonight. This is the March 9th regular meeting of the USD 305 Board of Education. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We do have one change for our agenda this evening. We need to add an executive session for student issues. It would be item 7C, or sorry, 12C. Someone would want to make that motion? Good.
I move we approve the agenda as amended with adding item 12C.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. Moving on, item 4A, You Make a Difference Awards with Jennifer.
Staff members whose exemplary actions support students, colleagues, and the mission of Salina Public Schools. Recipients of these awards receive a lapel pin and a handwritten note personally delivered by a Board of Education member. Richard James, grounds worker, Central High School. Richard is known for his quiet presence at Central. His tireless efforts to keep Central's grounds beautiful and safe are a constant. While he is rarely seen inside the building, his unwavering dedication to the campus outside of the building is notable and benefits everyone. Thank you for making a difference, Richard. Tracy Musselwhite, long-term substitute, Coronado. Tracy is a standout substitute. Often her assignments change depending upon needs in the building, and Tracy is always a good sport. She gets to know the students to better meet their needs, seeks professional training, and is mentoring new long-term substitute teachers. Thank you, Tracy, for making a difference. Bonnie Welty, principal, Lakewood Middle School. In inspiration to her staff and students, Bonnie is willing to do whatever is needed to get the job done. Her daily efforts and energy create a positive environment for learning and for working. Her example motivates staff to help and support one another for the well-being of everyone in the building. Thank you for making a difference, Bonnie. Alan Sokup, ergonomics paraeducator, Lakewood Middle School. Alan's colleagues appreciate that he is a great resource for his students and that they trust him. He makes sure to know and understand the students he works with, frequently following up and communicating with teachers and other adults who work with the students. Thank you, Alan, for your caring approach in your job and for making a difference. Denise Bennett, bookkeeper, South High School. Denise is known and loved by staff and students for her warm and caring manner. She goes the extra mile to help students with school pictures, graduation items, and even other needs, such as donations of graduation gowns, formal dresses, and more. Thank you, Denise, for making a difference. Michelle Forney, systems analyst, MIS. Michelle was instrumental in the transition to a changed hybrid schedule at the start of second quarter. She, with the help of her MIS colleagues, efficiently divided the students into 2 cohorts. With her expertise, she facilitated a process designed to smoothly adjust balances, saving much staff time. Thank you for making a difference, Michelle. And now we'll do our Superintendent Excellence Awards. Our first group of awards goes to swimming and diving state qualifiers at Central High School. All right, Dustin Burgart is the coach and Jeremiah Thornton is the diving coach. And we had one state qualifier, Cooper Cobb, who is unable to be here tonight. He placed 9th in the 1-meter diving, but we congratulate him. Our next group of awards goes to swimming and diving state qualifiers at South High School. Dustin Burgard is the coach and Jeremiah Thornton is the diving coach. And team members are Hayden Smith, sophomore, who earned a 13th place in the 1-meter diving. The relay team of Keegan Exline, senior, Trey Berland, junior, Miles Hammond, senior, Kyle Iceland, senior, earned a 15th place in the 200-yard medley relay and earned a 14th place in the 400-yard freestyle relay. Kyle Iceland also placed 12th in the 50-yard freestyle and earned a 4th place medal in the 100-yard backstroke. Keegan Exline placed 17th in the 100-yard butterfly and 12th place in the 100-yard backstroke. As a team, the Cougars placed 17th. Congratulations for a fine showing at the state championships. We now recognize wrestling state qualifiers at Central High School. John Corman is their coach. Boys, Slade Adam Senior. Alex Hernandez, Jr. Girls, Kate Jennings, senior. Rebecca Franklin, senior. Lydia Dong, freshman. Congratulations. Our next award goes to a bowling state qualifier at Central High School. And Mike Kilgore is the coach. And is Chase Young here this evening? No, neither of them are here. Thank you. Congratulations to Chase. Next, we recognize bowling state qualifiers at South High School. Seth White is their coach.
I'm the only one here.
Okay. The girls' team members are Stella Gessel, senior, Jessica Salinas, junior, Nina Fries, sophomore, Rebecca Guerra, Aviana Ordonez, sophomore, Ayala Ordonez, freshman, and the boys' team members, Griffin Peterson, senior, Campbell Peterson, freshman. Congratulations to all. And our last group of awards goes to wrestling state qualifiers at South High School. Kanan Wendell is their coach. Kaysen Dietz, junior. Brandon Jeffries, senior. Congratulations.
Thank you, Jennifer, and congrats to all our student award winners. It's exciting to see some students back in our meeting room and celebrating some great things happening in Salina Public Schools. Moving on to approval of the consent agenda items this evening. Those items are minutes of the February 9th, 2021 regular meeting, minutes of the February 23rd, 2021 special meeting, the personnel report, financial reports including the February bills list, the January treasurer's report, January investment report, and January journal entries. Approval of an agreement with Kansas Wesleyan University for softball field usage at South High School. Approval of the following encumbrance listings to CDWG in the amount of $49,629 for GoGuardian software for Chromebooks, to Field Turf USA Inc. in the amount of $74,682 to resurface the tennis courts at Central High School, to National Bus Sales Inc. for the purchase of a bus for Heartland programs in the amount of $100,310, to Master Connect in the amount of $27,225 for licenses and web professional development for 8 buildings, to Frontline Technology for the annual maintenance agreement renewal in the amount of $95,505.36. Approval of several grants for Heartland Early Head Start. First, approval of the Kansas Early Head Start Home Visitation Grant application in the amount of $272,000. No match is required for this grant in the 2021-2022 school year. Approval of the Kansas Early Head Start Child Care Partnership Grant application in the amount of $683,000. No match is required for the 2021-22 school grant year. Approval of the Federal Head Start and Early Head Start grant application for the amount of $5,278,281. A 25% match of $1,319,570 is required, which can include donated services and volunteer hours. Approval of the Kansas Parents as Teachers Program continuation grant application in the amount of $80,789 with a cash match of $51,534 for a total budget of $132,323. Approval of the preschool aged at-risk grant application. Funding is 0.5 FTE base state aid and accompanying weightings for the qualifying students enrolled. Approval of the Central High fundraising activity for the Central High football team to sell discount cards from June 7th, 2021 to August 21st, 2021. And for the South High School fundraising activity for the South High football team to sell Cougar cards from July 15th, 2021 to August 31st, 2021. Due to a potential conflict of interest, I'd like to remove the personnel report and not vote on that myself. If someone, I'll step out of the room and let someone make that motion.
Let's go ahead, Gabe, let's go ahead and just make a motion to approve the consent agenda minus that. Let you guys approve that, and then we'll let him step out and do the other.
Okay. Yes.
President, I move that we accept the consent agenda, all items besides the personnel report as presented.
Thank you. We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
I would now take a motion on the personnel report.
I move we approve the personnel agenda or report as presented.
Mark Bandre, second, Ann Zimmerman. All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay.
We are to item 6 on our agenda, public forum. If there's anyone here from the public who would like to speak on a matter not on our agenda, you can do so now. Good evening.
Hi, good evening, President Grant and fellow members of the board. My name is Stephen Howe. I reside at 2202 Melrose Lane here in Salina. On January 11th of this year, I was sworn in to serve as the state representative for the Kansas House District 71, which is East Salina and Saline County. I currently serve on 3 committees: Federal and State Affairs, Transportation, and Insurance and Pensions. And Insurance and Pensions oversees policy as it relates to CAPERS. So the Kansas legislature adjourned last Friday. It's at its midpoint of the legislative session. It's called turnaround. It's when all legislative bills have to get out of their house of origin. So the House, we voted and passed out 63 bills last week. Those now go over to the Senate, and the Senate sends their bills over to the House. So I'll be heading back to Topeka tomorrow to consider and hear those bills from the Senate. My main purpose for being here is to really formally introduce myself. I haven't had the opportunity to do so. I also want to convey to you that although we may not agree on every issue, it is my sincere desire to be a resource for you as I serve the constituents of the 71st District up in the Kansas legislature. As a state representative, it's very important for me to have citizen input, especially as policy is being considered in the legislature. The best way to contact me is by email. Many of you may have received an email from me earlier this year, but it is stephen.howe@house.ks.gov, or my office phone in Topeka is 785-296-7642. As I mentioned, the House will be back in session tomorrow. We'll begin hearing bills as it relates to education. So as this session progresses, please do not hesitate to contact me. So while there is a significant divide amongst legislators at the federal level, I have found the opposite to be true at our state house. So far, I've been impressed with the mutual respect shown amongst legislators. A great example of that is my experience working with the governor, specifically on finding a way that we can find funding for the Jobs for American Graduate Program here at our Salina schools, at Salina South High and Salina Central. All I can tell you is our conversations are ongoing, and I do feel optimistic about it. So hopefully I'll have something good to report in the coming weeks or months. So I appreciate you letting me come and speak before you today, and appreciate working with Superintendent Exline, and feel free to email me with any questions or concerns. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thanks for the work you're doing in Topeka. Anyone else here to speak in our public forum? Seven A, 2021-2022 textbook rental fees. Superintendent Exline.
Thank you. We just need for the board to set the textbook rental fees for next year. It's amazing that we're already gearing up for enrollment, but we are recommending no change from the current year. So you can see in your board packet under action agenda item A, the recommendations that we have moving forward. I do want to point out that for anybody that does enroll online during that designated enrollment period, that we do give a $10 discount per student. And so at this time, it's just recommended that you approve those textbook rental fees.
Thank you. Are there any questions from board members? Anyone want to make a motion? Jim?
I move we approve the textbook rentals fees as presented.
In a second?
Majority second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried 7-0. On to item 7B, tennis partnership update with Chris Upson.
Good evening.
Thanks for being here.
Let's talk about tennis. All I can see is eyes, so I'm a little bit. Okay, as some of you may recall, Salina Net Generation came and gave the board a presentation on a project concept that they had. fairly similar to what's happened with baseball and softball, private money being raised and the project being to build new tennis courts at the site of the old municipal pool. As you may know, that last Monday, the city commission approved that or gave a vote of support of that concept. Salina Net Generation has all along asked USD 305 to be a partner in that process. And what's a little unique about this project is that that partnership doesn't look like money being given to build tennis courts at this project. What we decided was, with Salina Net Generation, was that USD 305's involvement in that project could be to take over the Jerry Ivy tennis courts, which we use for Salina South. We would take those over as our property and then we would maintain them. As you know, the kind of the genesis of this project is the state of affairs with public tennis courts in Salina. All are mostly unplayable at this point, and it's a huge price tag to solve that. So this partnership solves that problem for the city and then some with the USD 305's involvement at Jerry Ivy. We've always wanted our own facilities. We like to be able to better control the activity spaces that we have for our students and not be reliant on anybody else, and be able to make those decisions amongst all the decisions that we make, but make them ourselves. So we feel like it's a good opportunity. What I'm asking for tonight, and I'll take questions, is I'm asking for a vote of support to allow me to continue to work towards that, to work towards the transfer of that property with the city, and make that a reality. At this time, I'll take questions if you have them.
Questions from board members?
What's the time frame that you're looking at for this, as far as trying to get some things started?
I'm shooting for 6 months. That's pretty arbitrary. The city's, the donated money that the Salina Net Generation is trying to use, that money tends to have a shelf life on it, and so they're really interested in getting going with it. Our involvement is we're not gonna proceed with taking over that property unless the city pulls the trigger on the project at the old pool, which they're in the first stages of that right now. So my objective, I've got a contractor actually lined up to resurface the courts. You approved that just a minute ago, resurface the courts at Central High. I have the same contractor lined up to be able to get into Ivy if we can do that yet this summer or fall, but be able to do that. So I'm looking at inside, certainly in between 6 months and a year to have that done and behind us and moving forward. As far as new, the overall concept for us as USD 305 would be to construct new courts at South High. The courts that are there can be resurfaced, but it's really a Band-Aid approach, and $50,000-ish will get you 3 or 4 years of life of the courts. New courts are $75,000 to $80,000 a piece, so that's a chunk of change we have set aside and saved for that. We'll talk capital improvement plan later on this evening, and this project is on there. Supposing that this all goes through, you will have already approved that as we talk about it, that action. That's a 2 or 3 years out project. Assuming the property transfer goes through, we're looking at 2023 to do demolition and build new courts over there.
Realizing, I don't want to take up everybody's time, but realizing that the condition of Jerry Ivy is far different than that at Central, what's the life expectancy of the resurface at Central?
The resurface, I don't have an exact answer to that, but I'm banking on 3 to 5 years, which is why we're looking at new courts at about the 2 or 3 year mark, so that we can get new courts before the deterioration of the resurfacing happens.
Very good. Any other questions?
I can't remember exactly where we landed on this. At one point, there was some conversation, possibly some public access to at least a portion maybe of these courts. Is that still in consideration with it?
It is. One of the commitments that I made to the city was that we would maintain 4 open courts as part of the deal. That puts public courts on the south end of town and is advantageous to the city. Long-term, what we're looking at is 8 new courts there to match kind of what's at Central, 4 of which will be locked off and 4 of which will remain open, which gives me a nice, for my entire career, I'll get a look and see public courts versus locked up courts, and does it really matter? And we'll be able to see that. But I did commit to 4 open courts. The city commission was very interested in that and maintaining that.
We wouldn't proceed with any involvement, though, unless the city commits to the whole project at
Correct,
Kenwood.
correct.
I don't, timeframe on the city making a decision on that? Do you,
They've made a preliminary decision, and I forgot, I'm sorry, but I forgot the official term for what they did. But essentially, it was a yes, continue vote, continue doing the work. They did talk about money and coming up with money, and so I'm optimistic that the approval that they did make will release the city staff to continue working on the project. Baseball, if you remember, was just 6 feet under dead once COVID happened, and I didn't get the sense from the city commission meeting that was the case here.
okay. Any other questions or motion?
Mr. President, I would move that we approve the partnership with Salina Net Generation, the city of Salina as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. On to our discussion agenda and item 8A, proposed textbook adoptions with Dr. Stevens.
Good evening. You'll recall back in October, we passed or approved a course called Environmental Science. Being that it's a new course, we needed a textbook, and over the last several months, teacher representatives from both South and Central worked really hard getting the curriculum written, as well as reviewing the textbooks, following kind of board policy and criteria. The textbook that was selected by our teacher committee, which consisted of Lori Train, Trey Crow, who's with us this evening, and Billy Joe Bonner. They did remarkable work and worked very hard on the curriculum writing. But they reviewed the textbook, and the textbook that was basically proposed, or what they recommended, is Environmental Science, Your World and Your Turn. And with that, you can see the material items there of 40 textbooks. This does have a digital textbook license for 6 years, which is very important to us with Chromebooks and making sure that our students have access to a hard copy in class if they need, but also have that digital access as well. And then the price listing there for $17,519.14. I'll open up to any questions, and Mr. Crow is also here as well if there's any questions from the board.
Any questions from board members?
Yes, that's on the discussion agenda. I wonder if there's any possibility of saving any money if we act quicker or delay progress. I mean, I trust Mr. Crow and his colleagues, they've made the best choice, but just
Sure.
wonder if the timing makes all this.
And I appreciate that. At this time, the quote that we have seemed to be pretty stable comparative to other quotes that we've had throughout the years. But as we all know, this time of year, a lot of school districts are doing that. There wouldn't be anything that would, from what I could find from the publisher, that would change that on that price, since they quoted it at that amount. And I certainly don't anticipate any future discounts on anything, so. But I appreciate you asking about that. Any other questions at all?
Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Item 8B on the discussion agenda, athletic handbook revisions with Superintendent Eckstein.
Okay, the athletic board has been working on the athletic handbook, and I just want to bring to your attention 2 different revisions that we are suggesting for next year. The first is on coaching positions for middle school cross-country. We have had, at the middle school level, excuse me, is it cross-country or is it track? It's cross-country, okay. I apologize, that gave me pause. At the middle school, we have had 1 head coach, and we have added, because of numbers, an assistant coach every single year. And so we would recommend that we just make that permanent. The athletic board has the ability to do that on a year-by-year basis, but the numbers really do warrant us just having that position be permanent at both buildings. And then the second thing is eligibility, and that's on page 25 of the handbook. And you'll remember that we brought to you a change in eligibility policy for 1 year only at the high school level because students were only enrolling in 4 classes at a time. We need to revert back to the language for when students are enrolled in 8 classes to where they have to be passing 5 in order to be eligible on that biweekly basis. So those are the 2 revisions that we are suggesting. One is just reverting back to old policy, and the other is to just make permanent what we're already doing and have been doing.
Yes.
Any questions?
Is this gonna be written in a manner, hopefully we don't have to go back to the 4? Is this gonna be written in a manner that we don't have to review this again? If we have to go back to half days?
The principals are actually working with staff to determine if we would have to go back to a hybrid schedule, what would that look like? And right now, the recommendation from KDHE, the Kansas COVID Work Group for Kids, the Kansas Department of Education is that we remain in in-person instruction at all levels, whether we are green, yellow, orange, red, that we remain in person. And so that recommendation just changed. And so the likelihood of us going back into a hybrid environment is very low. If we would have to do that, what they would do is adopt a schedule probably similar to what our middle school has done this year, that would be students going to part of their classes one day and part of their classes the next day. And so we will not need to change this policy again unless or until at some point the secondary schools came to us and said that they felt it was in the best interest of students to make a permanent schedule change of some sort. So does that answer your question? Okay.
Any other questions on this item?
Somewhat similar to my question to Dr. Stevens, is the timing of this, being able to hire the right person for the cross-country position, do we need to move things off the discussion agenda to action to get anything more timely, or are we confident we'll find the right person regardless?
We won't post that until fall anyway. Thank you for asking that, because sometimes time is of the essence. But that we'll actually post that in the fall. So if the board wishes to go ahead and move it to action and take action tonight, though, that is fine.
Any other comments, questions, motion? Thank you very much. Moving on to item 9A, school board reports and upcoming dates of importance. We finally have an upcoming date of importance, Sunday, May 2nd, retirement reception at South High at 3 p.m. Will be held outdoors and socially distanced, as I understand. We'll start with Emma on school board reports.
Did a Coronado Make a Difference Award and trying to, it was an emotional time but a fun time, and they're so appreciative of those awards. And then keeping track of House bills that affect the public schools. And then I want to thank Lisa Peters for being on the distribution of the URSID Earns Pandemic Funds Committee. That's great. And grateful for all the vaccines that are available for all the employees and staff. It's been wonderful.
Very good. Scott?
Assisted Jim with a Make a Difference Award. Also keeping up to speed on the JAG program. They had some good stuff in their newsletter. If you haven't had a chance to read that, I would recommend that you do so. And then attended the Head Start meeting as well.
Thanks, Jim.
I got to be a part of delivering a couple of the You Make a Difference awards. One with Scott. We had a good time with that. Got a little bit of an overview of South High. And that's all I've got right now.
I attended a CKCIE meeting where we discussed quite a bit about the push for summer school for everybody in the co-op. Attended a Salina Education Foundation, actually about 5 meetings for that.
But Match Madness is coming up, which is going to be really exciting, March 25th. We have sent out business partner appeals letters, and I think we've gotten 4 or 5 new businesses that we've never gotten before, so that's exciting. The biggest news is there's a possibility of 305 Live coming back in 2020. We didn't think that was going to happen, but there's a chance. And lift interviews are happening this Friday. And then I did 2 Make a Difference awards at Lakewood Middle School to Bonnie Welty and Alan Sukup. And it was nice to just be in the schools.
I attended Equity Council, and we had small group discussions on videos and articles about microaggressions, which were entertaining and informative. I was sorry to have to leave early to miss the start of a book discussion on how to be an anti-racist, which I have already read, and it's really a fascinating book. I did listen to Ms. Zexline on the radio several times, 99 KG, KSAL, and KINA, and she always does a good job. Thank you, that's all.
So I attended the same SEF meetings minus the lift presentations that Dana went to, and just want to echo, I think Michael Chambers is doing a great job, he's just doing a great job increasing visibility and getting the fundraising efforts in front of the right places. Just a lot of exciting things going on. I mentioned last month some of the estate gifts that SEF is starting to receive, and it's exciting about those as well. Just really positive things that help the community and help our teachers in the long run. So I really enjoy being a part of that board. Smoky Hill Education Service Council Board meets monthly, and it always seems to be 2 days after we meet here. So I'm now reporting on a month ago, but we meet again on Thursday. And there really wasn't anything revolutionary this last time. I really enjoy hearing from some of the other districts. One of the things I asked about this last time was, how do the other districts back at their boards hear about what's going on with Smoky Hill? Because then again, my seat, the one Emma used to fill, it represents Salina specifically. The others all represent a region. So for example, there's a gentleman on the board from Palco, and I'm sure he speaks at the Palco board, but how do the others get their information? And apparently superintendents all get copies of reports from Mr. Malamog and others as well. But it's interesting to see how a thing like this that stretches from western Kansas all the way to Topeka makes a connection, and just the great number of people we serve. I really enjoy being on that as well. For my Make a Difference award, it was fun. I was at Salina Central, and Jennifer mentioned Mr. James, who's the ground supervisor there. Well, Dr. Brungart and I had talked in advance, and the only way to actually meet Mr. James was for him to have a scheduled time to come inside. And I don't think the man likes to come inside, from what I can tell. I think maybe he thought he was in trouble. But we met in the lobby. I watched Dr. Brungart check temperatures, and we were still doing that. And then here came Mr. James, and Dr. Brungart introduced us, and I said, I'm here to recognize you for you Make a Difference. He said, "You're kidding." He was totally stunned that somebody would think highly enough of his work outside, and he was really, really pleased. So it's a similar sentiment, but it was just a fun occasion. So,
very good. I too attended a CKCIE Board Control meeting. Lots of work going there on assessments and whatnot as we get closer to the start of the next school year. I'm going to slowly a less not clear budget picture from Topeka, not necessarily a clear budget picture from Topeka. There was no Parks and Rec advisory board meeting due to a lack of quorum, and I also presented a You Make a Difference award to a teacher at Stewart. So that was great to be back in a building as well. On to the superintendent's report with Superintendent Exline.
Thank you. Well, probably the biggest news is that we're bringing all students back on April 1st. And I think, boy, how time flies. It seems like that decision was made a lifetime ago. But I realize it's been since our last meeting. And so we actually made the decision for April 1st based upon teacher input and when a natural break in the students' schedules were. And so that's why I've been having so many media appearances lately, because everybody's interested in, why did we choose that date? What's that transition going to look like? You'll recall that when we bumped back the beginning of the year, what that meant was that each 9 weeks starts later than we're used to it starting. And so April 1st is actually the beginning of the fourth 9 weeks for high school. At that time, the students at high school will have all new classes. And so by waiting until that date, there won't be 2 transitions. It'll just be 1 transition for the high school students. And so the plan is April 1st. We're working on busing right now. We're working on lunch plans right now. And safety protocols, principals are working on what that will look like in buildings as well. So we are certainly excited to have all the students back in the building. And I've been asked multiple times, how I feel the year has gone. And I just have to say, I think that we have been able to provide stability. We've been able to provide predictability. And I think that we've been very deliberate in our decision-making. And I think for our families, that has been helpful. So I also want you to know that we have started the discussion with Salina Area Technical College about the transfer of the property to them. And so Aaron and I met with them here not too long ago, and so we're moving forward with that. We knew that that was always going to happen, and so we're ready to start doing that transfer. And I wanted you to know that the Polycats, if you haven't heard about Polycats, Dr. Stevens, and he did a tremendous amount of work to get Polycats going. That is that partnership with K-State Polytechnic. It will over triple the number of student classes that our students have for dual credit, which is a great service to our students and makes this a really appealing place to go to high school, certainly. So the other thing I wanted you to know is I did get a chance to go out and tour One Vision and learn a little bit about their housing needs, understand a little bit about that business, and fascinating to see what they do there. And I'm really hopeful that that grows like they are hoping, because that will mean more students for us in the school district. And so that would be a really good thing. And then lastly, I'll just share with you that Lisa Peters and I have been doing the rounds on site council presentations, trying to update our site councils on strategic planning. We had 6 more of those this month where we got to talk to families, parents, and community members about strategic planning and budget in Salina, and then kind of what's coming next. So,
Very good. Thank you so much.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Lynn, going back to the April 1st, bringing everybody back full-time, I had one email from a member of the community that was a very nice email, but they wondered about, in the COVID times, they liked having 4 classes at a time as opposed to the 8 classes at a time. And when I responded, I said, hey, we've just got to keep on working and figure things out the best. But I just wonder if, when you've spoken with teachers or follow up at any of the radio shows, if anybody else had questions about that topic? Or?
No, I've received feedback both directions, and I actually asked the principals to engage in a conversation with their teachers about what was in the best interest of students moving forward. And so right now, the recommendation coming from the high schools is to go back to the 8 periods. I do know that that was really helpful for families, and I think that was a another example of a very good decision that this board made. When we were in a situation where students were in school only half days. I think it really did. It created more time to build relationships with teachers, and it also helped with the balance of workload. But the plan next year and the recommendation from the high school principals is to go back to the 8 classes at a time. I'll just add, one of the challenges on that, just in case you do have patrons ask, one of the challenges is that we have some classes that are performance-based, that have debate, that have competitions. And so, half of the students were not in debate first quarter when they were learning debate. And then second quarter, the debates were already ramped up and going. Same thing with forensics, band, the continuity of band, the continuity of orchestra, vocal classes, conditioning. So there are multiple classes where that was challenging. And so there's always pros and cons to any decision that we make. And so those were the kinds of things that they were discussing as they were weighing the best way to move forward.
Very good. We are at item 11A, personnel executive session. There's a motion in our packet. We would need 5 minutes for that. If someone would make that motion. Yes.
For personnel, you said, right?
Yep, the first one on the sheet.
Yes. I move that the Board of Education go into, hold on. I move that the Board of Education go into executive session at 6:15 for 5 minutes for the purpose of discussing an employee's request to return from leave pursuant to the
Can we do 6:20?
Oh, good idea. But let me start over. I move that the Board of Education go into executive session at 6:20 for 5 minutes for the purpose of discussing an employee's request to return from leave pursuant to the negotiated agreement, because if this matter were discussed in open session, it might invade the privacy of those discussed, and that the Board of Education reconvene into open session at 6:25 in the board conference room.
Is there a second? Jim seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried 7-0. We are in recess until our executive session at 6:20. We'll return back to this room after that concludes for any action from that executive session to make a motion to go into another. those two clocks. An ongoing issue. We are back in open session following our executive session. Is there a motion? Yes.
I move we grant Sally Holtus's request to be reinstated to work at Central High School as of March 9th, 2021.
Majority second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried 7-0. We'll move on to the next executive session, again for personnel, item 12B, just for 2 minutes. Okay. Motion at 6:26. Jim?
Mr. President, I move the Board of Education go into executive session at 6:26 for 2 minutes for the purpose of discussing personnel matters of non-elected personnel and their contractual obligations. Because if this matter was discussed in open session, it might invade the privacy of those individuals discussed, and that the Board of Education reconvene into open session at 6:28 in the board conference room.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried 7-0. We've got to go back in our executive session room. We'll be back in here to take action after that executive session. We are back in open session. Following that executive session for personnel, is there a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the extension of the superintendent's contract with Lynn Exline for 1 additional year through June 30th, 2024.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried 7-0. Item 12C, the added student executive session. There is a motion on that page. We need 15 minutes. What time do you want us to go in, Deborah? 6:31.
Oh, really?
You do that math for 15 minutes.
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education go into executive session at 6:31 for 15 minutes for the purpose of discussing matters relating to the actions adversely or favorably affecting a person as a student, the discussion of which in open session would invade the privacy of those discussed, and that the Board of Education reconvene into open session at 6:46 in the board conference room.
Is there a second? Mark seconds. Thank you. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried 7-0. We'll go to the board conference room for our session and be back here for any action after. We are back in open session. Is there a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we deny the student request to attend USD 305 without enrolling for the required policy for JVC.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mark. Second from Mark. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? That motion is good for what we need. Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you to everyone that joined us for our meeting this evening by live stream. That concludes the portion of our meeting. We'll recess here for a few minutes and move into a work session. Thank you.